sat alone in my dimly lit living room, wrapped in the same blanket I used to share with John every winter. The house felt like a stranger to me now, quiet, cold, and filled with ghosts. My husband's funeral had ended just a few hours earlier, but time no longer moved in hours or minutes. It moved in memories. Memories of him laughing over Sunday morning pancakes, of him holding my hand during late-night walks, of him singing under his breath while shaving. Memories that were now as heavy as bricks resting on my chest. The guests had all left. My son Jeremy had gone back to his apartment, promising to check on me soon. Everyone meant well. They offered casseroles, hugs, murmured condolences. But when the door shut behind each one, their footsteps faded faster than my grief. I wasn't just mourning my husband. I was mourning the life I had with him, the conversations, the routines, the way his presence grounded me even in silence. The chair across from me was empty. It had been his spot for years. He'd fall asleep with the remote in his hand and his reading glasses sliding down his nose. I used to scold him gently, teasing him for always pretending to be awake. Now I'd give anything to see him pretend one more time. I wiped my eyes with the corner of the blanket and reached for the untouched cup of tea on the coffee table. It had long gone cold, just like the space beside me. I hadn't turned on the television, hadn't played any music. The silence was brutal, but I didn't have the strength to break it. Then came the knock. First I thought I imagined it. It was faint, as though the sound had to sneak through layers of fog and sorrow. But it came again, this time firmer, more deliberate. I looked at the clock. It was nearly midnight. No one knocks on a grieving widow's door at that hour. Heart pounding, I rose slowly. My bare feet made no sound against the floor. I walked past the framed pictures of John and me in our younger days, our son Jeremy as a baby, our golden retriever Max, who had passed just a year before John. I hesitated at the door, then cracked it open. Standing on my porch was someone I hadn't seen in years. Brian Carter. He was my son's best friend growing up. He used to spend nearly every weekend at our house. I remembered him as a lanky teenager with an infectious laugh, a boy who always called me Mrs. Keller and thanked me for every snack. But this wasn't that boy anymore. This was a man. Taller, broader, with the kind of quiet confidence time carves into people. "Hi, Mrs. Keller," he said gently, his hands in his jacket pockets. I just heard about Mr. Keller. I'm so sorry." I opened the door a little more, unsure of what to say. My voice felt like it had been locked away. "Brian," I finally whispered. It's been so long." He nodded. "Too long. I was in town, and when I heard, I felt like I needed to come by." I looked at his eyes. They were still the same warm brown I remembered, but there was depth in them now. A sadness, maybe, or a maturity I hadn't expected. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. He walked in slowly, almost reverently, as if afraid to disturb the air. His eyes scanned the living room, and I saw them pause on John's armchair. "It still looks the same," he said softly. "Not quite," I murmured. "It's quieter now." He sat down on the edge of the couch, and I joined him, pulling the blanket tighter around my shoulders. For a few moments we just sat in silence. I didn't feel like I had to fill it. Brian had always had that effect. He was the kind of person you could be silent with and not feel alone. "I was thinking about him earlier today," he said. "How he used to take us fishing. Remember that time Jeremy caught your garden hose by accident?" I chuckled despite myself. "He swore he hooked the biggest fish in the lake." Brian smiled, and I saw something flicker in his expression, maybe recognition of how much he had missed this place. Or maybe it was grief too. He had known John like an uncle, maybe more. "He was always good to me," Brian said after a beat. "Even when I messed up. He never made me feel small. He thought highly of you," I said, my voice catching. "Said you had more potential than you realized." Brian looked down at his hands. I didn't believe it back then, but I remember what he said even now. Especially now. We sat for over an hour just talking. About old memories, about the messiness of grief, about how fast time seemed to disappear. Brian told me he'd joined the fire department in Chicago, how he'd seen more in 5 years than he thought he would in a lifetime. But he hadn't lost his gentleness. It lived in the way he spoke, in how he listened, in the way he looked at me without pity. At some point I realized I wasn't crying anymore. The ache in my chest hadn't vanished, but it had shifted, softened. Like Brian had taken a piece of it just by sitting next to me. "I should go," he said eventually, standing. "Didn't mean to intrude. I guess I wanted to say thank you." "For what?" I asked, genuinely surprised. "For letting me be part of your family, even for a little while." My throat tightened. "You were never a guest, Brian. You were always part of this family." He looked at me for a long moment, then stepped forward and hugged me. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't awkward. It was warm and strong, and I found myself clinging to it longer than I should have. But I didn't let go. Not right away. "Come by again," I whispered into his shoulder. "I will," he replied. And then he was gone. The next day he did come by. With dinner. And the day after that, with a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. He started showing up every few evenings, always with something in hand. A story, a meal, a memory. He never pushed. He never asked too much. He simply stayed. Weeks passed. I started sleeping a little more. I stopped crying every night. Sometimes I'd catch myself smiling at something he said, or laughing at a joke I hadn't heard in years. The house felt a little warmer. The chair across from me didn't look so empty. One night we were sitting on the back porch, wrapped in blankets. The stars were out, scattered like dreams waiting to be caught. "Do you ever feel guilty?" I asked suddenly. Brian turned to me. "About what?" "Feeling okay. Laughing. Sitting here. Like it's too soon." He was quiet for a moment. Then he reached over and took my hand. It was the first time he'd done that. "I think feeling joy again doesn't mean you've forgotten," he said. "It means you're still alive. And that's what he'd want for you." His hand was warm. Steady. I didn't pull away. "I still talk to him sometimes," I admitted. Out loud. "So do I," he whispered. The air changed between us. Not in a sudden way. Not inappropriate or rushed. Just deeper. Real. I saw something in Brian's eyes that night. Something unspoken. Something gentle but intense. And I felt a flutter in my chest I hadn't felt in years. But we didn't act on it. Not then. There was too much respect. Too much grief still being unpacked. But there was hope too. A small, beautiful hope that maybe, just maybe, love could take different shapes. That healing didn't have to be lonely. Weeks turned into months. Brian was always there. Planting flowers with me in the yard, fixing the old squeaky door, cooking dinner when I forgot to eat. Slowly, without realizing it, I had let him in. One evening, after we finished washing dishes, he looked at me differently. He stepped closer and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. His hand lingered on my cheek. "I don't want to make you uncomfortable," he said quietly. "But I think I've cared about you for a long time. I just didn't know it." My breath caught. "Brian, I know," he said. "I know it's complicated. But I'd never hurt you. I'd never ask for anything you're not ready to give." My heart raced. My husband had only been gone a few months. But in that time Brian had helped me breathe again. He had been the one to see me, truly see me, when I was invisible to the rest of the world. I didn't answer him right away. I just reached for his hand. Some loves begin with fireworks. Others with silence and small, steady sparks. Mine began on the night I sat alone after my husband's funeral, until my son's friend knocked on my door and reminded me that life, even after death, has a way of finding its way back to the heart.